The chalk snapped in half the moment it touched the board, and the room fell into an uneasy silence. 40 pairs of eyes stared at the equation that didn't make sense, numbers tangled in a way no real formula ever should. It wasn't just wrong. It was impossibly wrong. And yet Professor Adrian Voss stood there, calm, almost expectant, as if waiting for something, or someone. Before we go any further, if you believe that kindness, hidden talent, and second chances still matter in this world, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Tales. Your support helps stories like this reach the people who need them most. The classroom buzzed quietly, students whispering under their breath, some flipping through notes, others pretending not to notice the mistake. This was one of the most respected mathematics professors in the university. He didn't make errors. Not like this. Not something so basic, so glaring. But today was different. At the back of the room, near the door, stood a man no one paid much attention to. He wore a faded uniform, sleeves slightly rolled up, a mop leaning against the wall beside him. His name was Rafi Halim, though most students only knew him as the janitor. His presence was almost invisible, part of the background like the ticking clock or the hum of the ceiling fan. Rafiq wasn't supposed to be listening. He was supposed to be cleaning. But his eyes were fixed on the board. There was something about the way he stared, not confused, not indifferent, but deeply focused, that would have unsettled anyone who noticed. Except no one did. No one except Professor Voss. The professor turned slowly, scanning the room, his sharp gaze moving past rows of confident faces, past students who prided themselves on being the best, until it landed on the quiet man near the door. Rafiq quickly lowered his eyes, gripping the mop tighter, as if afraid he'd been caught doing something forbidden. Because in a way, he had. He was thinking. And thinking, in a place like this, wasn't expected from someone like him. The students began raising their hands, offering hesitant corrections, but their voices lacked certainty. Each suggestion was incomplete, slightly off, missing the deeper flaw hidden inside the equation. The professor listened, nodded, but didn't confirm anyone as correct. The tension grew heavier. Minutes passed. Then something unexpected happened. A soft voice, almost hesitant, broke through the silence. It came from the back of the room. Rafiq didn't step forward. He didn't raise his hand like the others. He simply spoke, as if he couldn't hold it in any longer. His words were careful, respectful, but unmistakably confident. He pointed out not just one error, but the entire structure of the equation, explaining how a single incorrect assumption at the beginning had caused every step afterward to collapse. The room went still. Students turned in their seats, confusion written across their faces. Some frowned. Others smirked. A few looked offended. Who was he to speak? But Professor Voss didn't interrupt. He listened. Fully. And as Rafiq continued, something extraordinary began to happen. The chaos of the incorrect equation started to unravel. Each mistake was revealed, not in a rushed or clumsy way, but with clarity and precision that felt almost elegant. By the time he finished, the silence in the room had transformed into something else entirely. Shock. The professor slowly picked up a fresh piece of chalk and, without saying a word, rewrote the equation, this time following Rafiq's explanation exactly. Every step aligned. Every number made sense. It was perfect. A ripple of disbelief spread through the class. Professor Voss turned back to face them, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, in a voice that carried both authority and something softer beneath it, he asked the question no one expected. How many of you noticed that? No hands went up. Not one. The professor nodded, as if he already knew the answer. Then his gaze shifted again to the man at the back. Would you mind stepping forward? He asked. Rafiq hesitated. This wasn't his world. He didn't belong at the front of a classroom filled with students who paid more in tuition than he earned in months. He was just a janitor. A single father. A man who worked long hours to make sure his daughter could go to school, have books, eat properly. But something in the professor's tone felt different. Not demanding. Not mocking. Respectful. Slowly, Rafiq stepped forward. The students watched him, some curious, others skeptical, a few clearly uncomfortable. His shoes were worn. His hands rough. He didn't look like someone who could dismantle complex equations with ease. And yet, he had. Professor Voss studied him closely. "What's your name?" he asked. "Rafiq," he replied quietly. "And where did you learn mathematics like that, Rafiq?" The question lingered in the air. Rafiq looked down for a moment, as if searching for the right words. His story wasn't simple. It wasn't something he shared easily. It was filled with unfinished dreams, sacrifices, and quiet resilience. "I studied, a long time ago," he said finally. "Before life changed." There was no bitterness in his voice. Just truth. The professor nodded slowly, as if understanding more than what was being said. What the students didn't know was that this moment had been planned. Not the answer. Not Rafiq's response. But the test. Professor Voss had noticed him weeks ago, lingering just a little longer in classrooms, glancing at boards filled with equations, pausing when lectures became complex. It wasn't curiosity alone. It was recognition. The professor had seen that look before. In students who were brilliant but overlooked. In minds that carried knowledge without recognition. So today, he had written the wrong equation deliberately. Not to trick his students. But to reveal something they were all missing. A mind they had all ignored. The realization began to settle over the room, uncomfortable and undeniable. The smartest person in the room wasn't sitting in a desk. Rafiq stood there, unsure of what to do with the attention now fixed on him. He wasn't used to being seen, especially not like this. For years, his life had been about staying invisible, working quietly, doing whatever it took to provide for his daughter after his wife passed away. There had been a time when he dreamed of becoming a professor himself. He had once been at the top of his class, known for solving problems others couldn't even understand. But when responsibility came knocking, dreams had to step aside. Survival came first. And survival didn't care about talent. Professor Voss broke the silence again, his voice carrying a weight that reached every corner of the room. "Intelligence doesn't come with a title," he said. "And it certainly doesn't depend on where you stand." The words landed heavily. Some students looked down, reflecting. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few seemed to reconsider everything they thought they knew about success, about worth. But the moment didn't end there. Because Professor Voss wasn't finished. He turned to Rafiq and asked something that changed everything. "Would you be willing to come here again tomorrow?" he said. "Not to clean, but to teach." The room erupted into whispers. This wasn't just surprising. It was unheard of. Rafiq blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. Teach? Him? He felt the weight of years pressing against his chest, the missed opportunities, the sacrifices, the quiet nights spent helping his daughter with homework under dim light. He had buried that part of himself long.